That is James Mennie over at the Montreal Gazette. Jim, I haven't talked really about what happened last night in Arthabaska, so let's go ahead and dive into this a little bit. I remember when we first talked, looking ahead, and said the big reason, or at least the big issue here, will be how poorly the CAQ does. So it was a matter of not finishing second or third. They finished fourth. We heard the premier say, you know what, it's all on me. So what do you think? What's next here?
Well, there's nothing surprising, surprising. We always have people who are in charge of something. When something goes horribly wrong, going, yes, well, it's all my responsibility. Of course, you're in charge. It's your responsibility. But what I find interesting is that he's promising the changes will come down the pipe. And the press is reporting that he intends to meet with, I don't know, I guess like the equivalent of a focus group up in Quebec City. Why Quebec City? Maybe that's what he thinks a real Quebecer looks like, is if they live in Quebec City. And he's going to sit down with them, and apparently there's going to be no media, no holds barred. Tell me what's wrong. And indeed, and this is the thing I find very interesting, you say, is a factor of whether I should stay or I should go. Now, the fact that that's out there, the fact that's being said, as far as I'm concerned, opens the door to that very possibility. It opens the door to the possibility that no matter what he is told in these theoretical focus groups, no matter what he learns, no matter what people say, no matter what the polls say, he is, as far as I'm concerned, slowly but surely stage managing a dignified exit. I mean, insofar as being the captain of the ship on the quarterdeck, and you've got water sloshing around your knees, saying, "Yeah, I think I better go." But that's pretty much where he is right now. And I really think that these meetings he's going to have, he meets with cabinet Wednesday anyway. But the thing is, it's just you can't think of a single reason why anyone in their right mind, with any concern for their party, with any concern for the future of their party, would be staying there. It is clear the CAQ has a problem. I mean, okay, it's not just they finished fourth. They finished with 2,600 votes compared to 17,000 for the PQ. Now, remember, this used to be a CAQ riding. Eric Lefebvre left to run for the federal Tories, but he won with 51% of the vote, Aaron. So all of a sudden, it's clear the channel has been changed for Quebec, and you can't get more Quebec than the Sons of Quebec with the rising of Arthabaska. So as far as I'm concerned, I think the clock has begun to tick. You will probably see gradually some jockeying for position, perhaps in cabinet for a kind of, après regime. But honestly, for the rest of them, we haven't heard from the vast majority of the CAQ caucus over the past 8 years. Don't expect that to change anytime soon. But really, I'm really getting the impression now, Aaron, that it's over, and slowly but surely, it's like the workmen are beginning to move the props and stage the devices off, and pretty soon there's going to be just Francois Legault standing in center stage with not much else to support him.
So let's go to the other part of this, Jim. And you asked the question. I think it's kind of fair to look at this and try to understand. Here's the big win for the PQ, and you basically ask, how is the PSPP going to manage this whole idea of walking away from a referendum, or at least not having it be part of his everyday?
Absolutely, because in the end, and folks, if you're just joining us, the PQ won. It was supposed to be a neck-and-neck race between the PQ and the Quebec Conservative Party, led by Éric Duhaime, who was the candidate. And in fact, it was anything but. The PQ beat Duhaime by 4,000 votes. That's about 11 percentage points. That is not neck-and-neck. That's a good 3 lengths ahead. But all that said, the question is, fine, it's a by-election. You can vote how, and the PQ, as I've always said in the show, Aaron, the PQ does not have any magic other than they're not the other guys. They are not the incompetent CAQ. They are not the, who knows what the hell the Quebec Liberal Party is this week. They are not the party of perhaps angry voters that rightly or wrongly the Quebec Conservative Party is perceived as being, okay? And they certainly aren't the ongoing angst session, which is what Quebec Solidaire has turned into, which is another party which may join the CAQ headed to Davy Jones' locker in time for the general election next October. But the thing is, you're not going to win a government with a promise to hold a referendum in your first term. I don't care what he says, and he can stick to his guns all he wants. Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon has painted himself into a corner using his tongue as a brush. He has said he will do this. He is not backing down. He's not even getting wobbly on it, which is fine. But in the end, he is giving any of those parties any of the parties that are not enjoying any popularity right now because they're not the PQ, he's giving them all kinds of openings to turn around and say, oh, yeah? So really, yeah, you like the PQ, but you want to have a referendum on sovereignty, even though it's an option that the vast majority of Quebecers have no interest in doing. And please, let's stop talking or spinning this glitch in a couple of opinion polls that find, young people are in favor of sovereignty. They don't vote, and believe me, that even if they do, by the time they show up on election day, they'll be voting for anything but sovereignty. So this is it. How do you get rid of that? And that'll be his big challenge, I think, quite frankly. Never mind winning by-elections. The ideal between now and October, how does he elegantly manage to pirouette his way away from a very clear, very down-to-earth promise and turn around and say, listen, I want to govern this place, and I know I can't do it, saying I'm going to take it out of Canada.
I wonder, and maybe I'm sort of missing the forest for the trees here. I remember talking to him like a year ago, right, when you could talk about separation as much as you wanted to. No one really talked much about it then because we were still so far away from a provincial election. You really think that PSPP tries to just bury this every time it comes up because it doesn't serve him well?
Oh, this is a tradition as old as the sea itself with the Parti Québécois, Aaron. They're the most vociferous supporters of sovereignty, including a PQ cabinet minister by the name of François Legault, eventually find federalist Jesus and come to their senses and say, no, it's not for Quebec, it's not what Quebec wants, that's not what we need right now. So the thing is, I mean, and this is going to be interesting to see if the rank and file or if indeed the apparatchiks in the PQ turn around and say, listen, boss, you can be, un homme de conviction, and turn around and say, yes, we will hold, this is what we're going to run on this in the campaign, we will hold a referendum on Quebec independence. In the if we form the government after 2026, you will have a referendum in our first term. Well, there's nothing, absolutely nothing to indicate that people are going to buy into that for any reason whatsoever, especially now when the single biggest factor in Quebec and Canadian politics is Donald Trump. So, he's going to have to find a way to as I said yesterday, slowly but surely cut away at the noose he placed around his own neck with this promise if he intends to be Premier of Quebec. If he wants to go down fighting and as a man of his convictions and, he got wiped out, but the fact is, it's, let's face it, the PQ is only even with this victory, they're at 6 seats. Why are they at 6 seats? Because in 2018 and indeed in 2014, the vast majority of Quebecers said, we're fed up with this broken record about sovereignty. It's time to move on. Do you really want to start playing that song again, Aaron? I don't think so.
Okay. I would ask you just really quick, Jim, with respect to the Liberals, we have not talked about it in the wake of what happened yesterday. Yeah, they finished third. They finished ahead of the CAG. Nothing they can be, I don't think, too excited about. Does this shape up as the battle they want now that the PQ, have this sort of, wind behind their sails?
Well, if we go with the record, Aaron, the only trick in the Quebec Liberal Party's bag is, and given the number of times they've basically thrown their supporters under a bus, is to turn around in the end and say, we're federalists.
Right.
Do you really want to vote for a bunch of separatists? Do you want that uncertainty? And it has worked for them in the past. Will it work again, or will indeed Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, who seems like honestly, he seems like a bit of a pragmatic guy. If he turns around and finds a way to elegantly steer clear of that promise, I don't know, we'll see if you have winning conditions, blah, 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 blah. We've heard it all before. I got news for you. The Liberals are going to be in huge trouble if he disentangles himself from that promise.
All right. Jim Mennie at the Montreal Gazette. Thank you, Jim.
Adama.